She has over 40 years experience in the travel writer and broadcast industry, like when you started when you were 12, 6?
About
Something like that?
Close.
40 years?
Close.
She created and hosted a 1-hour weekly travel show, Let's Talk Travel with AAA, from September 1993 to May 2022. A frequent world traveler, Fenton is recognized as a travel and cruise expert on 130 plus cruises. That's pretty awesome. Her in-studio show guests included well-known travel experts from around the globe, plus top-level industry executives and professionals, including airline and cruise ship captains, well-traveled celebrities, best-selling travel authors, tour operators, and celebrated hoteliers. Did I say that right? Well, the COVID-19 pandemic did change a lot of travel, and when the world shut down, most travelers wanted to stay closer to home and engage in road trips and drive to getaways. And due to the overwhelming requests and inquiries from Fenton's listeners and readers, the show came into fruition called Let's Visit PA with Sandy Fenton, which explores stunning natural beauty and quirky off-the-beaten-path attractions found in every corner of our state. So welcome, Sandy.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy birthday. Well, thank you. So that pretty much is the bio, actually. And I did have a quick question before I begin. So my husband brought me here, and the reason that I had him bring me is when I was a little girl, for almost 5 years, I was at the Elizabethtown Crippled Children's Hospital. So I don't know if anybody remembers that.
Yeah, we used to work there. Yeah.
So that's where I was, and I had my husband, before we stopped, take me up there. So I got a little emotional with it, but it's changed. So it's now the Masons. I mean, what? Could somebody just tell me what is it now?
National Guard training facility. It's also the state prison and correctional training
boy.
facility.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying. So that's, I think, the last time I was in Elizabethtown, and I'm happy to be here today in a whole different capacity, I have to say. So, as Denise said, I am considered a travel expert. I have been on over 130 cruises, believe it or not, and I'm not 85 yet. I've traveled the world many, many times, and I had the great fortune of meeting so many celebrities along the way, but mostly top-tier travel experts. My favorites always were the ship's captains. I'm in love with all of them. I've interviewed all of them, and they're wonderful, wonderful people. Some of my favorite shows was when I would have the ship's captains and their wives that they met from the States, and they end up getting married. And I've had them in the studios with me because we all want to know what is it like to be the wife of a captain, of a real ocean liner captain. So they've been very, very fun. I've had astronauts on the show with me. I had Tom Watson on the show, who I called Todd the whole time. And he kept telling me, my husband almost died because Stuart's a huge golfer. And I would go, I'm just sorry, Todd. He'd go, oh my God, Sandy, it's Tom. And I was at the Greenbrier with him, and I was invited. I was the only non-sports related. It was all about travel. And that's when it was Let's Talk Travel with AAA. So I've been through a lot. I was in the air on 9/11, and I was the only journalist in all of Scandinavia, and I did a coastal cruise on what is called the Hurtigruten. Back then, it was called the Norwegian Coastal Voyages, and it's considered the most beautiful voyage in the world, and I'm here to tell all of you, it is. It is the most stunningly beautiful, natural cruise history type of thing I've ever done. So when we were leaving, we got on the SAS flight to come home, which is Scandinavian Airlines, flying out of Oslo. And we were in business class, and we were sitting up front with all doctors from Norway. And they were all going to a big convention in Dallas. So we're up there, we're having champagne and watching movies, and everybody's just yakking. And all of a sudden, the captain came on and made an announcement. And he did it first in Norwegian, and you heard this collective gasp. But we didn't know what was happening. And then the next time, he came on in English, and he said that there had been an explosion, and that he was directed by his superiors to turn the flight around, and we had enough fuel to get us back into Oslo. and that everything was gonna be fine. Well, the doctors, everything went crazy. And the doctors, they were all using their cell phones, and this is, 20 plus years ago now. And they allowed us to use it, and the next thing we saw was that the Pentagon got hit. And then there was something happening in Pennsylvania, so that of course scared us to death. Well, we went back to Oslo, and there were 22 Americans on the flight. And there were 5 couples that had been on the Rotary cruise with us. So we kind of all, banded together and decided we all wanted to stay together. And we ended up going and staying at a Radisson SAS hotel in downtown Norway, Oslo. And we did that because we didn't want to stay at a hotel at the airport because we didn't know how long we were going to be there. Well, for 5 nights, the Norwegians took care of us like you wouldn't believe. They paid for our beautiful rooms, all of our meals, all of our drinks, all psychiatrists, psychology, anything we wanted, all of our phone calls. And they all said it was because of what good care we took of them during World War II. And they felt that it was their way of giving back to us. So we were the first flight out of Oslo and actually out of Norway. And it was crazy because everybody was scared. And it took probably 6 hours, it was close to 6 hours to go through the luggage. And I'll give you a tidbit here. So at that time, believe it or not, I was a spokesperson for Pepto-Bismol because I thought I carried Pepto-Bismol with me everywhere, especially for overseas flights. And that was the good old days when you could take the pink liquid. Now, I've had that confiscated a million times. You have to take the tablets, folks. But anyway, I had my 2 big things of Pepto-Bismol, and all you saw, everything stopped. It shut down, and everybody was like, what is this? And they passed it all around. There were no secrets. Believe me, anything you had in that suitcase came out, and everybody saw everything. So we got on the flight, and we had actually, the King of Norway's son was a pilot for Scandinavian Airlines. So he was on too, because he was not as a captain, but as a passenger, but he was in his uniform, and he was going to New York to represent Norway. So we get on, and the captain made this wonderful speech, and as we were taking off, we were treated with such love and gratitude. So I'll probably get teary again. But when we landed, so we were coming from Oslo to Newark, and we had no idea the extent of everything. We knew what we saw on television. And actually, I forgot to tell you, when we got back to Oslo, on the return flight, because we couldn't get into the States because they'd shut down the airspace, it was like the paparazzi thing. I mean, everybody swarmed around us because they only wanted to talk to the Americans. So they hustled us into a big hotel convention center, and all the questions started to come. And we didn't know anything because we didn't know what had happened, but then we saw it on the television. So anyway, we're flying back, we land in Newark, but right before we landed, Captain came back, he said a prayer. He said the Pledge of Allegiance. He blessed us, and then he said, if you look out the window, you'll see the smoke, and the smoke came the whole way up. Oh, it was awful. So I came back, and I remember thinking, well, my show's over now. Nobody's gonna travel again, which was nothing compared to everything else that was happening. Well, it ended up that not only did my show go through the ceiling, I only ever lost 1 sponsor, and that's because they went out of business. So continuing on with my life, 9/11 then was the big thing. And it changed travel, as we all know. That's why, everything with TSA and the airports, and it's no fun. And if anybody said flying's fun, I know you're lying, because I am very privileged and fly all the time in different ways. It is not fun. I don't know if it's ever going to be fun again. It's just something you have to have a lot of patience with. But in my life, I've never seen anything like COVID. And COVID just shut everything down completely. And we were fortunate enough when everything first happened, I was traveling. And I would do shows in advance so that while I'm traveling, my shows are there, so everybody can still hear them on a weekly basis. And I guess we got into, I don't know, maybe April, the middle of April. And all of a sudden, all of my sponsors of all of those years started calling and saying, Sandy, we can't sponsor anymore. We have no money. We have shut down. I've been laid off. And I didn't know what to do, so I thought, all right, just keep forging straight ahead. And then I started interviewing all of my colleagues, all the presidents of the cruise lines. I interviewed every single president from every cruise line. I did a lot of air professionals with the air top executives. I even had that guy from Amtrak on, because Amtrak was crazy. And I had the bus, well, they want to call it motor coach, but I had the bus. I had everybody on. And then Pennsylvania Tourism came to me, and they had always been a sponsor, actually. And we talked about doing a show, and it became, and Sean was in some of these things, and believe me, I love it. I'm having a lot of fun, but working, and I mean no disrespect to anybody, working with the government and the state is, oh my goodness, it is a whole different ballgame. And now, because I don't have total control of everything, and the state bought my show, so now it's called Let's Visit PA. So instead of having all of the captains of the ships and the presidents of the Region 7 Seas and Royal Caribbean and Seabourn and Norwegian and everybody, I'm having now the presidents of all the counties. And there are 67 counties in Pennsylvania. And I'm actually having a ball with it. I've had everybody from Schuylkill County to Greene County to Beaver County, Carbon County, you name it. And there's something to be learned from every one of these counties. And Pennsylvania is so beautiful, and drive-to destinations continue to be top, very much top of mind. That's what people want to do. And that's what I've been doing a lot of. In fact, I also write for the Patriot News. I'm their travel writer. And I just did a big story and featured 4 bed and breakfasts within Pennsylvania. And I know a lot of people think, oh my gosh, a bed and breakfast, that is like grandma's house, 1 bathroom, 20 people are sharing. No, trust me, they're luxurious, they're beautiful, they come in all shapes, all sizes, and I had a ball. So I wanted to stay close to home, and my husband is always my luggage carrier and my driver. So Stu, and he retired. I'm the only one working. So I always will say, like, Stuart, here's what we're doing, and here's where we're gonna go, but we're gonna stay close to home. So I visited 4, and we stayed overnight at these 4 bed and breakfasts in and around central Pennsylvania, Lancaster, Gettysburg, Carlisle, and then I had to do Harrisburg. And it was great fun, and I just came back from Skytop, if anybody's familiar with Skytop Lodge, in the Poconos. My kids actually grew up there years ago, and then they changed hands a few times, and it was our first time back, and it was great. And Bedford Springs Resort in Pennsylvania is a wonderful facility. My goodness, the Inn at Leola Village, have you got, that's right down the street. That's a terrific property. And Hershey Hotel. Anyway, you all know, there's a lot of wonderful properties. And my last trip, my last cruise was in April, and I'm a big fan of transatlantic. And if you haven't done it because you think you're gonna be bored, I am here to tell you, you will not be bored for 1 second of your life. The pricing is the best you're ever gonna have. So if you need some R&R, if y'all need some R&R, I need it bad. It's a great way to travel. So we went from Miami, stopped at the Azores, and then ended in Barcelona, and it ended up being 15 nights. It was great. So it took 6 going over, then we're in the Azores, then we did a few more things I can't even remember, and then ended up in Barcelona and flew home. And then our next trip is next month, and that's back to Alaska. So if you haven't been to Alaska, and actually, I just said this in an interview on the river, another station of ours, because I do a Wednesday travel update every Wednesday morning. Because of COVID and because of how strict Canada was, you couldn't go to Alaska for that period of time almost. This was the first year it's been fully opened. Every ship is in Alaska. So there's an overabundance of cabins. So August, if you guys want to squeeze in a great trip, I'm here to tell you, contact, of course I'm going to say AAA, but you have to go through a travel agent. Contact a travel agent and find out what the rates are for this August. And Alaska, I love it, but I'm telling you, the rates will never be better because they're gonna take away these ships now in 24 and 25 because there's too many of them. And it's all levels. It's the big family cruise ships like Royal Caribbean and NCL. It's the premiums like Holland America and Princess and Celebrity. It's the deluxe and the luxury like Viking, Azamara, Oceana. And then it's the ultra luxury, all inclusive, walk off the ship with 0 on your bill. And that's Regent Seven Seas, Silver Sea. Crystal doesn't do it, but Seabourn doesn't. So anything you want to know about travel, I will tell you the honest to God truth, because I'm not a travel agent. Everybody thinks I'm a travel agent too, by the way. And I never have been, I never will be. But if you have any questions about anything with travel, I'm here for you. And if you don't, I can ask myself some. Because I had to do a big interview for my 25th, and I'm now on my 30th year doing the shows. So I had to put together all these questions, and I thought, well, if anybody's shy, I'll just ask myself. So do you want me to ask myself? All right.
Do people call you and say, I want to go on a trip, but I want you to come with us?
Always.
I would imagine that.
Always. And I did that, okay. See, this is why I wasn't sure about being on film right now, because I've only done that a couple times. And the reason, truly, is because they want all my time. And I had some issues with the last one that I did. I mean, I had grown men, like my father's age, this was at least 12, 15 years ago, like asked me, Sandy, do you mind if I use the bathroom now? I was like, oh my God, yes, go. You know, and I just felt that wasn't a good fit for me. But the answer is yes. And I find also when I travel, like I never tell people, and we meet everybody, because as you can tell, I'm a yacker. And while we're having drinks and you start talking with people, and you know, after dinner you're sitting and or having tea and you just meet people and chat, and everybody wants to talk about travel. And I used to tell people who I was and what I did. And I stopped doing that because I turned around and again, my husband would be like, how do you, everybody's calling your name. And I'd be, I don't know, I can't do this anymore, because I would sit and talk travel. And because I'm gonna tell you the honest truth, because I'm not selling anything. So does anybody else have any questions? Yes, sir.
Best cruises for like if you want to visit historical sites.
So here's what I would say to you, and that's a two-way question. Pretty much everything nowadays, other than the Caribbean, but even in the Caribbean you can find historic sites. But if you really want historic sites, you need to go overseas.
Mediterranean or?
Well, all of Europe, Northern Europe. Some of my favorite cruises have been to the Baltics. Now because of all the stuff with Russia, I've been to Russia 3 or 4 times now. I wouldn't go back. I would never give them 1 penny now. There's a lot of countries that I would never go back to for different reasons, but I won't say any of that right now. But there are. And for historic, I would look into river cruising. If anybody, has anybody taken a river cruise here? Did you love it? What line were you on? Do you remember? Viking, terrific line. And so I've had the great privilege, I think I've been on 5, and I'm hoping to do the Christmas markets again. The Christmas markets, oh guys, it's sailing on the small river ships with 190 people. They're all inclusive, and even if they're not totally all inclusive, you're having your beer and wine at lunch and dinner, and that's all included. All your meals are included. The entertainment's included. You pack and unpack once. It's seamless, which matters. And you go through the most charming fairy tale cobblestone villages along the river, and you talk about history. You'll see history like you've never seen before. All the castles, the manor houses, the way of living. I would highly recommend doing it again. And you can start with Viking. Viking is made from Americans. Viking is a great line, both ocean and river, and expedition. And they know Americans. They have a formula and it works. It's all exactly the same. And the clientele are Americans. But depending on your pocketbook, and you want to jack it up a little bit, There's a company called Uniworld. They literally had to kick me off. I loved it so much. It's more international. Everything is included. It's very fancy pants with meals, but every single thing is included. And that was spectacular. So I would highly recommend the river cruises. And one of the questions that I was gonna ask myself was, has any trip ever really exceeded your expectations? And the river cruises way exceeded my expectations. I never dreamt I would love it so much. Yes, sir.
Have you ever done a Mississippi River cruise?
I sure have. And I have to be honest, when I did it, I'm in my 60s now. When I did it, we were in our 40s. And we were not just the youngest by 20 years. We were the youngest by about 50 years. And you know what, that's fine. But it was so hot. I just was not that impressed. And I know some of you may have done it and go, well, we loved every minute of it. And that's okay. We weren't that crazy about it. And I'll tell you something, you know, my show was Let's Talk Travel with AAA then. And AAA sent the most people on the Mississippi. They did the most Mississippi cruises with those ships. So every time somebody would ask, I'd have to go, yeah, talk to a travel agent about this. Yeah, you know, my job is to keep people traveling, but I cannot lie to anybody. But Viking has a ship in the Mississippi. And one of the wonderful things about what I do is I have been able to develop relationships over all these years. And we become friends because our personalities are similar. But Viking, Mississippi, has been sold out since it first came out. I can't get on it because there's no room on it. But if you get the chance, it's supposed to knock the socks off of every river cruise. So I'm here to tell you, I think you'd love it. Okay. Yeah.
Is this your first Rotary presentation?
So it is. I have not, I was telling Sean, I haven't talked to anybody since COVID. And prior to that, I was asked, as you can imagine, by so many people to do talks. And I had a hard time turning them down because I want people to get it and I want them to know the truth about stuff. And then I thought, I'm not doing this anymore. And then Sean asked, a long time ago actually. And I said yes. And I'm very happy to be here. I think you can tell.
We've been on Viking several times, but one of the more interesting things is they put out a daily newspaper of
Sure.
what's happening on board. And I asked, could we have a Rotary meeting on board? Of course I did.
And did they allow it? Because
Yes.
they do have Rotary, yes. That's a great point because on many of the ships, on ocean and river, but mostly ocean, they do that because they have more space. And they will have clubs on board, like, guys, let's do this again, but let's do one of the ocean ships. And you have your meetings, and then you use it as a fundraiser, but you also go on these trips. And that's when you need a good travel agent to put all of that together for you. But yes, they do have this. And I'll tell you something else. Have you guys ever heard of what, I think it's called Bill W? Wait, is that it? There's an organization, and it's for alcoholics called Meet Bill W. Does that, well,
Denise,
every
do you know?
cruise, there is a list. You get a pamphlet, and at 5 o'clock, there would be a listing that would say, Bill W. meeting at 5 o'clock. And every cruise we were on, we would see Bill W. And it would be, who is this guy? Why is he on every ship we're on? We couldn't believe it. It took years and years. And when I finally asked one of my captains, I saw Bill W.'s on. Who is he? Will you show him to me? And he went, Sandy, that's the Alcoholic Anonymous meeting. I went, what? And that's what, he was the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous. But every ship at 5 o'clock, he was listed because that's who it was. So he had his own meeting too every time. So, anyway, yes.
So I have a comment. So I've listened to you for years.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you because now I don't have to travel. Because I've been everywhere you've been. You're so good at describing everything and it's fantastic. And
Thank you.
I just love your show. And
Thank you. I'm very grateful for it. It's done so well. It's a dream. It is a dream. And I've been able to do what I love. COVID made me crazy. There are still things working with the states making me crazy. Oh, no. I forgot again, I'm on camera. But Sean, you gotta get that out. You have to do some snipping and nipping. But I love it, and I don't know, to be honest with you, Let's Visit PA, I'm continuing through 25, June of 24, because there's only so much Let's Visit PA, I'm already doing so much, I can't see doing Let's Visit PA for 10 more years.